All right, good morning. My name is Cassidy Ellis, Local Governments Program Manager here at SPEAR, and I run the City Efficiency Leadership Council, which is a SECO program for local government. Today, in our monthly webinar, we will cover LoanSTAR and SECO's local governments program updates. We are joined today with a couple of my other compatriots in the SECO local government program ecosystem. So really glad to have them here and learn about what's going on with LoanSTAR and the other programs. So a little bit of a review of some of the SECO local government programs in addition to LoanSTAR and the technical assistance that is provided by our speakers today. So SECO does run kind of a wide array of resources and outreach, education, technical resource development programs for local government. On this side, we have mostly our education and outreach focused ones. So my program, City Efficiency Leadership Council, is focused on peer-to-peer networking amongst local governments and sharing of information across those peers. North Central Texas Council of Governments operates a regionally focused regional energy management program, similarly developing outreach and training resources, as well as working with local governments in that region around their benchmarking and reporting efforts. Watchers of Texas is a K-12 focused behavioral program that develops programs within schools and increasingly at home as well. SPEAR and NCTCOG run local government energy reporting outreach and technical assistance for state mandated energy efficiency reporting. And for those of you who are familiar with that, you know that we just kind of went through our reporting season and kind of coming out the other end of that. So that's, it's nice to be on the other side. SPEAR also offers HVAC training for building officials. This is a program run by my colleague Jason, and it is also web-based and in-person technical training. And finally, Houston Area Research Center, Advanced Research Center, HARC, provides technical resources and guidance for property assessed clean energy. All information about all of these programs are available on the SECO website, and I'll follow up after this webinar with a bit more information about all of these programs. I'm not going to go into these in too much detail because Jim and Chris will be talking about them, but the technical assistance programs are both the preliminary energy assessments provided by the engineering partners at SECO, as well as specialized technical assistance for specific projects. And then what we will be discussing in most detail today, LoanSTAR, which is low interest funding for energy and water conservation projects. A bit more information about the City Efficiency Leadership Council. As I mentioned, it is a peer-to-peer collaborative information sharing and resource development program for local governments. We have predominantly worked with cities. It's open to any public entity though. And we have webinars like we're attending today, regional roundtable luncheons, which are of course are virtual now. And we develop other technical resources and information. The way you get involved is get in touch with me. Of course, I will email all of you after this webinar with my contact information. Okay, few quick announcements before we get into Jim and Chris's presentation. Our next City Efficiency Leadership Council webinar will be on Thursday, March 11th. That's 2 weeks from today. And this is a pretty specialized presentation for water and wastewater systems. The Department of Energy SWIFT initiative is recruiting for their 2021 program right now. And so within any of your cities or any of the cities and systems that you work with, if you know that there is an opportunity for either fundamental foundational energy management or more advanced energy management, the SWIFT program has a couple different tracks that they're recruiting for. So this should be a good webinar on the 11th. Many of you know that I'm involved with the Energy Services Coalition Texas chapter. This is a public-private partnership organization bringing together energy services companies and other actors in the energy savings performance contracting universe with their customers, their customer base, and the public sector to advance the adoption of ESPCs as a means for energy and cost savings. So we have our chapter meeting. It is open to everyone, regardless of whether or not you are a member. And I will send information about that in the follow-up email as well. SPEAR is hiring a codes program analyst. This is someone who, it is a part-time position who will support our energy codes program around a data project, DOE data project. If you know any college students, grad students who are in analytical programs or have an analytical background, it should be a really interesting position. So I will send more information about that. This webinar will qualify for International Code Council CEUs. So if you need those, please fill out the feedback survey that I will send after the webinar, and I will get those to you later this week. If you have any other announcements or questions as we are going through the presentation today, please use the chat function and make sure and select to send your comment to all panelists and attendees. You can also choose to use the Q&A box if you just have a question. If you would like to raise your hand to speak, you can do that in the participant box. So ask to raise your hand and I will allow you to talk if you would like to interject a verbal question. And I'll keep an eye on those and I'll try and field the questions as they come in for Jim and Chris as we're going through the presentation. So with that, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to our speakers today. Jim Brown and Chris Carter with ESA. They have been involved with SECO's local government technical assistance programs for many, many years. And I know many of you on the line have met them or have worked with them. So I'm really glad to have them here today and looking forward to the information that we're sharing today. So Jim, I am going to, oops, not that. I'm going to stop sharing and let y'all take over.
All right, thank you, Cassidy. My name is Jim Brown, and as Chris is getting our slides up, let me just explain a little bit who we are. We are a professional engineering firm in the state of Texas, and we are one of the 3 technical assistants hired by the State Energy Conservation Office of Texas to help them through the more technical details of these programs. And the ones we're going to be talking about today, Cassie has already mentioned the preliminary energy audits, which is one avenue to get into the LoanSTAR loan program. Notice that is LOAN, LoanSTAR loan program. It was money that about 30 years ago we had some taxes that were being collected at gas pumps that were higher. The collection rate was higher than the actual federal rate. So the difference between the collected amount and what was actually due was sent to the various states. It was broken down and all 50 states got some of the money. Texas originally got $98 million. And rather than send every citizen a check for $2.37 like New Jersey did, Texas put their money into a revolving loan program. And it was specifically set aside for energy efficiency, to replace equipment, revise systems and controls, and the kinds of things that are necessary to make your systems operate more efficiently. It's called, again, the LoanSTAR program, and it's good for public K through 12 schools, local and county governments, public higher education universities, and state agencies. You'll find in a moment, you'll find that the breakdown for who has used the program over the years. Let me just begin by saying SECO every October will put out what they affectionately call a NOLFA. It's a Notice of Loan Fund Availability. that tells you that SECO has analyzed how much money they have available, and they let you know how much that is, and it's usually in the multi-millions of dollars. In all the years that we have worked with this program, we haven't known very many who applied for the project, who followed all the rules and did not get the money. These technical assistants that SECO hires will work with you as long as you're willing to work to pursue this money. It is money that's available to you, and it can be obtained. The maximum loan size per application is $8 million. There are, in the parentheses there, you'll see $3 million minimum for the repaid ARRA or ARA money, and I'll explain that to you a little bit more later. But now there are two funds that SECO is drawing from to get these funds. The loan payback requirements has to be less than or equal to 15 years, and it has to be less than the estimated useful life of the equipment. In other words, you can't set up a loan for 15 years for a piece of equipment that's only supposed to last for 10 years. The maximum number of loans that you can have is 3 per applicant, and you can apply every fiscal year for 3 loans. Now let's stop a moment at this point on the slide and see how much money might be available to you. In the beginning of this program, the average loan was somewhere in the $1 million to $1.5 million level. But now, at this point, you can continue to get 3 $8 million loans each fiscal year. For that, what is that? $24 million that you can get into every year, and until you have all of your energy efficiency projects that can be done, you can get them done as long as they meet those loan criteria of having a 15-year or less payback. Interest rates are from the 2 different funds. The general fund is that Exxon oil overcharge money I was telling you about earlier. That annual interest rate is 2%. But then if you want to go through DOE and get the ARA money, that annual rate is 1%. And you say, well, that's a no-brainer. Well, it's not necessarily a no-brainer, because DOE has a great deal more hoops that must be must be jumped through. You have to do the Davis-Bacon wages. You have to do the Buy America. You have to make sure that your payroll is to the penny. It is worth that extra 1%. But if you have a large loan, that 1% smaller interest rate could really amount up to quite a bit of money. So for anyone that's going after large quantities of money, we tell them, hey, you need to look into the ARA funding, even though it is more of a headache back on the accounting side. Your applications are received on a first-come, first-served basis. But again, I will tell you that in my recollection over the last 20 some odd years, I don't remember anyone who met all the requirements and was approved for an application who did not get the money that first year. The applications are you submit them anytime prior to the next NOLFA offering, which again is in October of each year. Okay. If you have any questions on this is kind of a key page for us to discuss. We're really trying to get this money into the public. SECO wants to get this money out into your hands and energy efficiency gained by you. So they're going to do everything that they can to help you get the money into actual projects and saving on your utility budget. All right.
Hey, Jim.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to jump in here, and we do have a question, and you sort of covered this, but do you know how much of this year's $98 million is still available?
At this point?
Yeah.
At this moment, the $98 million is not all back. Basically, I'm trying to remember what the last amount was. There's probably somewhere in the $25 to $30 million that's available at this point from the general fund. However, the ARRA fund, there's substantially more money in that program that's available. Like I said, every October, they sit back and they analyze how much money is left to loan out, and some of these firms are taking 10 years to pay that money back. So they started with 98 million. So we're, there's, once again, and those they wouldn't have raised the maximum to $8 million per application if they didn't have plenty of money to cover anything that they anticipate you turning in. I've got Chris here by me. He's been doing the same thing with me for a long time, and I'll ask him, but I don't think I've ever seen a application that was turned in, even at the $8 million level, that was not funded.
No, sir.
Okay. So does that answer the question? They obviously can't loan what they have, but I think they have ample money for what they estimate is going to be coming in this year from anyone. Okay. And
Great.
the anyone are these eligible borrowers that you're seeing on your slide now. Any public taxpayer supported entity can get into this program. If you fit one of these two government codes or administration codes, you can apply for this money. The loan qualification criteria is that it has to be a permanently affixed project, like a chiller or windows or whatever it is. It has to be permanently affixed to the facility, and whoever is borrowing the money has to own and occupy the building. And at this point, that third-party review, let me just talk about that a little bit, because that is one of the key elements of this program. There is accountability set up within this program for the benefit of the borrower. If you decide that you're going to apply for one of these loans, you're going to end up having to hire a professional engineer who knows something about energy efficiency calculations, and they will do what is called a utility assessment report for you. That report will be turned into SECO, and SECO has 3 engineering firms, we're one of them, who review all these calculations and make sure that the estimates are reasonable. And then we'll go through the rest of the process as on the next few slides, but I just wanted to make sure you understand that SECO is going the extra mile in hiring technical support, that their only job is to make sure that the project, that the engineer that you have hired to do the UAR is reasonable and feasible, and everyone on the team believes that this is going to be a good project for you. Okay. As a loan recap over the years, I think it's like 30-year program now. There have been 326 loans for a total of $548 million. The savings from these loans so far, and it's a moving target, but the savings for these loans up to this point have been around $695 million for public entities. And you can see the loan recap breakdown. 232 of these loans. Public schools have really jumped in to this loan program, and local governments are getting more and more. State agencies haven't jumped in as frequently, but when they do, it's usually for a much bigger dollar amount. And in the beginning, we had a lot of public hospitals that jumped into the program, but we're only showing 13 now, and the primary reason for that is hospital projects tend to take much longer, which is a point that I skipped over a little earlier. When you borrow this money, they want you to finish the installation within 12 months. If it cannot be completed within 12 months, you can get an extension for 6 months and get it out to 18 months, but beyond that becomes a problem. And hospital projects usually do take more than that 18 months. So we haven't seen a whole lot of public hospitals jump in, but we have had them in the past. And if it's just a simple one-for-one replacement of a 700-ton chiller, you can certainly get that kind of project done within the 12 to 18 months. Okay, just skipped one. The way you get into the program is go to the SECO website. Find the funding and incentive point, and then click on SECO funding opportunities. And when you do that, and by the way, when you get to this particular page, you might take a moment just to sit back and look at all the programs that SECO has available. They really do have all kinds of opportunities for public entities to learn about energy efficiency, to be trained in energy efficiency, and to fund the projects. Just wanted to make that little plug for SECO because it's been around for a long time and it's very beneficial to the public entities.
Yeah, Jim, hey, Jim, I was just going to jump in. If you don't mind going back to that previous slide, just highlight that the local governments program is the 5th one down under the programs tab, and that's where you can find information about all of the other programs that I mentioned at the top of the presentation. Do also want to note that we have a couple more questions that have come in, and you might get to these later, but the question came in, does SECO procure the third-party review and technical support?
Yep. There are actually 2 third-party reviews. There are, by code, when a public entity gets involved in say a performance contract, a guaranteed savings kind of program, that public entity must hire their own third-party analyst. Okay, SECO, at the same time, if you use LoanSTAR money, SECO throws in their third-party analyst, the one that's under contract to them. So if it's a guaranteed savings project, there's actually 2 third parties looking over the shoulder of the designer of the project, and which just adds more assurance that the savings is going to be there. And the one that SECO is throwing in is free. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything to get that additional assurance. But the SECO technical analyst cannot replace the requirement for the public entity to hire a third party, an analyst, for a guaranteed savings project. Does that make sense?
I think so. And then the other question that's open is just confirming that it is in fact a revolving fund and repaid amounts go back into LoanSTAR.
Yes, ma'am. That's how we kept the money rolling for the last 30 years. The repaid money goes back into the LoanSTAR program, and in October, they sit down and analyze how much money is available, and they announce another NOFA. All right? Okay. The NOFA, or the notice, when you go to the website, you'll look under SECO funding opportunities, click on the NOFA, and you can actually sign up. You click on the sign up button, and you can actually sign up to receive monthly or periodic notifications from SECO as to when new funding opportunities are coming available. They will tell you about other programs also that are becoming available. When you get there, you go to the LoanSTAR revolving loan program, click on that one, and you'll get into the LoanSTAR process. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the process because most of it is behind the scenes for most of the people, I think, on this particular conference. But under the LoanSTAR process, there's 2 different things going on at the same time. You will turn in your application. You'll find an engineer, or you can just fill out the application and call SECO and ask them if they'll give you one of those free preliminary energy audits. And if they come out and do the preliminary energy audit and that analyst decides that you've got a program that's in the making here, you can attach that to the application and turn it in, and SECO will hold that amount of money for you while you're doing your more technical analysis. That analysis is called the Utility Assessment Report. That one requires a professional engineer to do the report for you. You have 140 days from the time that you turn in the application to complete that technical study. And I will tell you, it is an ASHRAE level 3 study. It's a capital investment program type analysis. So the engineer will turn that in. The third-party reviewer will review it. There will be a lot of give and take back and forth between the engineer and the third-party reviewer until everyone is satisfied that the actual projections are accurate and that the 15-year payback is going to be met. And then you move into the loan agreement time. At that point, you can't spend any money on this program. Let me make this point. You can't spend any money on this program and be reimbursed except for the funds for the engineer to do the analysis. until the loan agreement is actually signed. After the loan agreement is signed, then you can move into the design phase. During the design phase, the LoanSTAR's third-party consultant will do a 50% and a 100% design review of those drawings, just to make sure that everything that's in the utility assessment report is being actually designed into the project. Then you do your retrofit activities, and the third-party reviewer will do a 50% and 100% site inspection. I hope you can see SECO's desire here to make absolutely certain that the borrower is going to get their money's worth out of this program. And then after all is done and everybody has agreed that the final project is complete, then the loan repayment schedule will be sent to you, and on a quarterly basis you'll be making payments back. Okay. Now we're going to move into the technical guideline changes. For some of you, you've been involved in LoanSTAR in the past, and you follow the Volume 2 technical guideline requirements, but over the last year or so, we've made several changes to try to keep the back and forth and the redo of calculations down to a minimum. So we've made some changes that we think are making it easier to get that done, and that's where Chris is going to jump in and talk to you. Before we get into the technical, are there any other questions on just the general things that we've been through so far?
The only other question that came in, I think, is probably going for Chris's update, but there is a question about consistency amongst the third-party reviewers, meaning are they looking for all the same things and those things, and are those things disclosed up front so the target is known? So you may be covering this, but.
Well, Chris will be covering this, but let me just mention that one of the reasons we've gone through so much work the last year or so to change and make the process easier is because the third-party reviewers are all engineers. They're all hard-headed. Let me say we all have our own way of doing things, and we have seen things differently in the past. But that doesn't mean anything has stopped. It just means that it slows the thing down. So part of what you're going to see in these next few slides is for the third-party reviewers to all get on the same page. And we've all come to some agreement on a lot of the issues that have come up in the past where we had not agreed before. We were working Eddie Trevino way too hard in having to be the final approval of the different issues that were coming along. So I know some of you have been frustrated over that in the past. Your frustration, however, has only come about because of the third-party reviewers' zeal in trying to make sure that these projects actually save what they promised that they were going to save. Hopefully, going forward, though, we're going to see a lot less of those kinds of issues coming up. Okay.
Good morning, this is Chris Carter. Yes, what Jim just said is very true. We've had a number of meetings over the last year just between the individual technical consultants and discussing the issues that have come up and been a little bit in disagreement. And those things are being worked through. But ultimately, the engineer, the author of the report, and the performance contractor or design builder or just design bid builder needs to understand that the purpose of the technical consultant is to make sure those energy savings are there. The program is set up not as an equipment replacement project, but it's an energy savings project. And the goal of the whole program is for the energy savings to pay for the note for that owner, so they don't have to tap into fund balance to install these projects. And that's why the rigidity with the technical consultants trying to make sure that those energy savings are there. What we don't want is a client, a city, or somebody calling back and saying, well, we didn't get our energy savings, now we're having to tap into fund balance to pay our note. And that's where the rigidity comes from. But we're trying to be much more cooperative amongst ourselves and resolve that issue. But when you're on the LoanSTAR site, you'll see these technical guidelines button. There's 2 volumes there of guidebooks. The first one is kind of the roadmap. It's a thicker volume. It has an actual sample LoanSTAR report in it, and it deals with a lot of the how do you handle this situation if your utility bills don't have demand on them, or how do you communicate those utility bills in the utility analysis section. So it's kind of the instructions in the roadmap. Volume 2 actually has several of the simplified calculation methods. You'll see copies of the Excel spreadsheets that are available in Excel from the LoanSTAR website that make you have a much easier time communicating the calculations for very simple projects. For instance, lighting. It's energy in, it's light and heat out. Those can be shown very easily on a SIMCalc spreadsheet, as opposed to something that's referred to as a type 3 measure, where you might be converting a primary secondary chilled water system over to variable primary. That's a little harder to do on a simple Excel spreadsheet, and so you would have to refer back to volume 1 to show you how to do those kind of calculations. But that's the purpose of the 2 books that are there, and they are downloadable in Word format from the LoanSTAR website. Types of projects that can be funded. Energy efficiency lighting is huge right now, both indoor and outdoor. High efficiency HVAC, and you can read this list as well as I can read it to you, but basically anything that's going to save the client energy, water, money on their utility bills is going to be a project that can be approved for a UAR. Who can prepare them? Jim touched on this before, but basically a professional engineer licensed in the state of Texas with knowledge and experience in MEP systems. Contracting mechanisms, design build, and energy saving performance contract are all acceptable contracting mechanisms for this program. What if a client has already started a project or it's partway through construction? Are they allowed to try to retroactively apply for a LoanSTAR for that project? And the answer is no. Most of it is, but what Jim already referred to is that the program, and it is actually run through DOE, organized by the State Energy Conservation Office, so it's federal rules that we're trying to comply with. But their rules are that if money has already been spent on the project prior to the application and acceptance of the contract, that it would not be allowed to be included in the project. The only exception to that, again, is the cost that you had with the PE that was preparing your UAR report originally. One of the changes that we've made at the request of SECO is to have defined UCRM category numbering. SECO has to report to DOE regular basis on all the savings and the progress of the loans. And the varying numbering systems that were showing up on the reports made it a little harder for them to organize their predicted savings in terms of the categories that they were being assigned under. So this chart, which is included in the new volume 2, shows you what numbering system you should use for the various projects. And the point of this is being that you may not have a sequential list anymore if you've done this in the past, where lighting might have been 1 and commissioning 2 and renewable energy 3. Now SECO is asking that the list be using these specific numbers. So if your project had lighting controls, HVAC, and a building loan reduction, for example, then your CRM list would be 1.1, 2, and then 7, and you wouldn't have a 3, 4, 5 or anything like that. So it's not a huge mental exercise to figure this out, but it is a little unusual when you start a new list after having done this in the past, and you're not necessarily putting them in the same numbering order that you're used to. The Texas Historical Commission. Anytime that you're doing a LoanSTAR project in a building that is 45 years or older, or it's listed as a National Register for Historic Place, there does need to be some communication with the Texas Historical Commission to let them know that the project is going to be done. Most of the time, this is a very simple communication because the nature of the projects that are done through LoanSTAR, they're typically a 1-to-1 replacement of existing split systems or chillers or something something that is already aesthetically present with the register. And so their concern is that you just don't start creating some great big new solar project or create a new central plant outdoors or whatever in front of your historical building that wasn't there before. So most of the time that communication is relatively simple, but it is a process that needs to be included probably at the time your engineer is finishing the UAR and you're starting to go into contracting phase, because there is a section of the reimbursement paperwork that you will send to SECO for SECO to send the money back to the owner, that you have to document that you've had that communication with THC. So it's not a difficult thing, but it is something that has in the past caught people by surprise, that they were trying to get their money reimbursed from SECO and they had not initiated this conversation yet, and it was slowing things down. So wanted to call attention to it a little quicker. Another change, I guess, that we made to the report, it's really not a change in philosophy or the way that anything's been done, but as we talked about briefly before, one of the communication errors that seemed to be happening between various reviewers and the authors of the report was the actual definition of what the anticipated useful life expectancies were for various pieces of equipment. And again, this is not a Bible per se, but anything that differs from the numbers that you see on this list here just need to be explained and supported with other documentation in the report. For example, a residential split package here shown as a 15-year median average life. And that is ASHRAE's typical recommendation for what you accept for that. However, I've done a number of reports in West Texas where I know in the drier climates out there, you can get 20 years out of a residential split system just fine. And as long as you demonstrate that in your report and show the age of the existing units and what's going on with that, that can be accepted through your technical reviewer. But just know going into it that it's going to need to be something close to the numbers represented in this chart. Another thing that was a little bit debated often between the authors of the report and the technical reviewers was how to determine what the current operating efficiency of the units that you were planning to replace is being established. I found this formula in the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs in a white paper from 2017, and taking the data that we'd already used for years with SECO on what their allowable minimum efficiency is for the simple calculations, massage the formula a little bit to come up with this formula, where you take the new condition of the new conditioning EER of the equipment that you're replacing. So when it was new, and you just have to go online and find the carrier catalog for that split system back when it was new, and it'll tell you what that EER is. And then you deduct this maintenance factor from 1, and then take that to the power of the age of the equipment. And that will allow you to have an approximate EER for what that older equipment is out in the field that will comply with the accepted calculations of SECO, and be able to show it in a formula instead of just guessing what it might be. Typically, when you only have 140 days to prepare a report, you can't go put a data logger on an existing piece of equipment. And even if you do, you only have that season's worth of data. So we were trying to find a way to establish a way to show a calculation for what that existing EER might be.
Hey, Chris, can I just jump in here real quick? It seems like that answers a question that we have in the Q&A, but I just want to confirm. The question is, how much savings can I count if I use LoanSTAR to buy a new efficiency chiller or other equipment in order to avoid a huge repair cost if I were to keep the existing chiller? The existing chiller has higher annual maintenance costs also than my new chiller that the new chiller won't have. So I believe that formula is the answer to that question, but can you confirm?
Well, yeah, this formula would tell you what the operating efficiency, the estimated operating efficiency of that existing chiller would be at whatever age that it was currently sitting on your property. So if you have a 10-year-old chiller, then you can use this formula to estimate how much degradation of your energy efficiency performance has occurred over that time. And of course, the longer you wait to replace it, the lower that number will be. That EER is used in the calculation for the energy savings compared to whatever new product that you're going to have there.
How are avoided maintenance costs then considered in the current?
We're coming right up on that slide.
Oh,
yes,
sorry.
No, that's okay. You didn't know which slides we had coming up. But yeah, in fact, I think it might even be, yeah, it's the next one right here. So this is also a relatively new thing for the LoanSTAR project, and that is the ability to use maintenance and operations savings as part of the calculated savings and payback for the project. Now, this is also something that has recently been one of those sources of variance between different technical reviewing firms as to what is acceptable. And this is the one we've probably focused on the most over the last 12 months in trying to become consistent with each other. And therefore, we included this as part of the changes in the guidelines. We still need evidence of what those maintenance costs are. So getting at least 12 months, 24 is even preferable, of work orders that apply to that specific piece of equipment that document what the owner is having to pay to keep that system working is what's going to be required in the report for the technical review to agree that all those costs are there. And we do have a limit to how much of those maintenance costs you can utilize as part of your savings estimate. They should not exceed the energy savings number. So the maintenance cost savings have to stay at least 49% of what your total estimated savings for that piece of equipment would be.
That's a maximum.
And that's the max. The duration of those operational savings should not exceed that remaining life that you have on that piece of equipment. So going back to your question, Cassidy, if you have a 10-year-old chiller, let's say air-cooled, that is going to have a 15-year life expectancy, then those maintenance costs could only be used for the next 5 years of calculation, because you wouldn't be allowed to say, well, the owner planned on keeping it 25 years anyway, so we're going to have 15 years worth of maintenance savings. It can only add up to the number on that ASHRAE chart that tells you what your original anticipated useful life was for the equipment.
Yeah, let me jump in here, Chris, because for years and years, we had a lot of trouble getting LoanSTAR or the requirements for LoanSTAR to fit the really long payback HVAC projects. If you've been doing calculations on HVAC replacement equipment for any time at all, you know that it's really difficult to just go on a one-for-one replacement and have less than a 17 or 18-year payback on a major HVAC piece of equipment. So being able to add maintenance cost savings is a real benefit now, because it's making it much, much easier for you to get those high-cost HVAC projects passed through. But we do have to have demonstrated evidence of what the maintenance savings would be. And Chris mentioned the fact that work orders, that's our, of course, that would be our best way of knowing, but you can also go to RS Means, their facility maintenance and repair cost data. You can use anything that's reasonable that helps us understand that, yes, there are additional expenses for keeping this piece of equipment that we won't have to pay when we go forward with this project. And I will again say that it's making it far easier these days to get large dollar HVAC projects passed through LoanSTAR now that we can use these hard cost savings. Okay.
Cassidy, you think that between those slides?
Yeah, I think that sounds very helpful. And I can confirm this is something that I have heard out in the world as I've been talking to both customers and on the ESCO side about complications and confusion there. So it sounds like that is a welcome update, but maybe the folks on the line can confirm in the chat that that is what you had hoped for. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am. So in summary, the changes that you're going to see in the guidelines they're not significant. They are intended to facilitate getting the program reviewed and approved much more quickly, to get out of that review phase and into contracting. But the efficiencies were pretty outdated in some sections of the manual. We just got them updated to match the new ASHRAE 90.1s. And we added the formula trying to help being able to calculate what that operating efficiency of the equipment is instead of just estimating or just assuming the lowest number possible automatically. And then there's some new light level updates. Also, that section was a little bit outdated, especially with all the transformation to the LED. There were some sections of that manual that needed to be updated and made a little bit more modern. And we got those wrapped up as well. I think that's our last slide. Oh, this is our last slide. Just some contact information that we have here. Eddie Trevino, he's the director of the LoanSTAR program at SECO. And of course, Mr. Brown here. And John is a new employee at SECO. He is one of our reviewers, I guess. Each of the technical consultants that works for SECO has a person at SECO that we coordinate with at least monthly and usually much more regularly than that helps ensure that all this program is moving forward as fast as possible and as seamless as possible for the owners and contractors that are involved.
And what this slide really shows you guys is there is an avenue of appeal. You know, we realize that technical reviewers for UAR have their own opinions and they may differ from yours. So if Jim Brown makes a decision and you don't like, you can call John. And if John makes a decision you don't like, I guess you can call Eddie. And if Eddie makes a decision you don't like, well, maybe you know Governor Abbott. We want you to have that avenue of appeal, but at the end of the day, our job is to be absolutely certain that the people borrowing the money are going to get that energy savings in the time limitation that you say they are. Okay, that's just the bottom line. And that's the end of the changes. LoanSTAR has been around for a long time, and it will be around for a lot longer. But we just want you to know you've got a tremendous pot of money available to you right now. And once again, I will say I've never seen anyone who met all the rules and not get the loan if they wanted that loan. So the ball's in your court now. The money is available. Take it away, Cassie.
Cassie, I'm going to stop sharing now.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, thank you guys so much. That was very informative and definitely picked up on some of the questions and comments that I've heard out there in the market, and it sounds like it was a really good update process. I am curious who was involved in kind of the working group to develop some of these updates. Can you speak to that?
All three technical consultants were. For this particular round, it was coordinated through our office, and I physically did most of the typing and the paperwork part. But all of the changes that were in there were distributed to all the technical guideline consultants, and everybody's recommendations were reviewed, and then ultimately Eddie is the one that decided whether everything was put in or not. But it was a cooperative effort between all three technical consulting firms.
Yeah, if you're asking who they were, that would be Easy and Jacobs Engineering and ESA. Those were the three firms that most of the time working on it.
Great. And just a reminder to the audience, this is the time to ask questions. If you raise your hand, I can unmute you if you want to ask a verbal question. Otherwise, the Q&A box is a good place, or the chat function as well. One question that I received a few months back is the user of LoanSTAR, the loan taker, as they're going through a performance contract process, for instance, they will want to have their own third-party reviewer that is kind of their agent in that process. Is there a list or kind of known set of third-party reviewers in Texas that can be available to the public? It seems like sometimes identifying that third-party reviewer can be challenging.
Yes, ma'am. I do not know of such a list. I do know that the person that does the review needs to be an architect or a professional engineer, but I am not aware of a list that it's not like the Texas accessibility list where you can go and find a specialized, consultant for that specific activity. I think it's probably just an architect or a professional engineer that does that sort of work.
Yeah. And that seems like kind of an unmet need in the market, that having some sort of third party to evaluate those qualifications, and not necessarily a state oriented third party, might be a valuable addition for customers. And curious to hear from the ESCOs if they agree that that's been a challenge in their experience. And just to confirm, sometimes LoanSTAR is somewhat equivocated with PACE. So LoanSTAR is the public version of PACE. And I know the programs operate quite differently, but one aspect of PACE is that it can be used for new construction to help fund the above code improvements. Can you confirm that LoanSTAR cannot be used for new construction?
Cannot be what?
Cannot be used for new construction.
Can LoanSTAR use?
No, can be. It can be used for new construction, but you can only get funded for the difference in improved efficiency. For example, if the standard guidelines for a new split system is 13, EER 13, you can only be funded for the difference between the 13 that is in code as opposed to the 16 that you're actually going to install. Okay. So the difference between the cost of the 16 EER as opposed to the 13, which is required by code, you can get that portion funded. So as a result, that's a small number, and as a result, see very many applications for new construction.
Got it. Okay, yeah, I was under the impression that it wasn't available to new construction at all. So that's good to know.
Yeah, you can still go small number. Yeah, Cassidy.
Got it. I saw a hand pop up. So if that person wants to put their hand back up, please do. We do still have a few more minutes and some time for some questions from the audience. Oh, yep. All right, Cliff, you should be able to come off of mute. Are you there, Cliff?
Oh, excuse me, I didn't unmute.
Okay, there you are.
I guess you can hear me. So hey there, Jim and Chris. I don't want to take us down a rabbit hole here, but can you comment about solar projects whereby a third party would come in and design, build, and maybe maintain the solar array, but they would prefer to lease it back to the client, or for that matter, sell electricity at a slight discount from what they're paying right now? Can LoanSTAR participate in in a third party arrangement with a solar provider? Have you guys seen something like that so far?
Cliff, you're jumping in on something that is a relatively brand new conversation that we're beginning to have with SECO. And the only answer I can give you right now is that we don't know. But the people who are making that decision would be like Eddie Trevino, and I think it'd be a really good idea for you to pick up the phone and give him a call or send him an email.
Okay, Jim. Hey, by the way, I know you're an engineer, and the correct answer, I think, to my question, given what you said, the correct answer would be it depends. So
the engineer's favorite response.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Y'all did a good job here, and we appreciate your moderating, Cassidy. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And you need you need information from how to get a hold of Eddie, well, we'll be happy to send that to you. But I do want to encourage you to make that call, because that's an excellent next step for LoanSTAR, if we can just get that into the program. Thank you.
And just to let folks know, we do have some attendees from SECO. So if you want to share your comments or thoughts, there are some folks on the line listening from the office. Jim, it's always been kind of interesting to me that so much of the LoanSTAR loans have been with school districts, and relatively few with local governments, in particular municipalities. And my program works predominantly with municipalities. So I'm curious if you have thoughts about why that breakdown has happened that way.
Well, I think probably in the beginning it was because public schools were the ones that had the greatest need. Most of the city governments we would go to in the state of Texas would have pretty much residential type equipment other than their water distribution systems. And, you know, I'm only speculating here, but we worked pretty hard for years to get municipal governments involved in the LoanSTAR program, and just never got a lot of receptivity until we started doing work on wastewater treatment plants and water distribution. Then it began to pick up quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've always, oh, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, sorry, but there's also been an uptick lately in cities getting involved as the LED costs have finally come down enough where it's reasonable to put those in. So many cities, even small ones, have so much parking lot light and area lighting that they have to have, and getting the cost benefit of getting LEDs in has improved so much recently that we have seen a big increase in the number of cities that are interested in doing the lighting projects. And one of the comments, we always make it, but one of the things we left out of the rest of the presentation is, if you're entertaining doing the LoanSTAR, don't just candy pick the really easy lighting project and not also look at your HVAC, because it will limit your ability to get some of those higher payback HVAC projects later in your program done if you're not also taking advantage of doing lighting at the same time and help averaging out that overall payback for the project.
Absolutely, that comprehensive cost payback calculation is so important. And I would imagine that the footprint of K-12 buildings across the state is a more order of magnitude greater than municipal footprint.
I think you're right.
Okay, well, oh, go ahead, Jim.
No, that's all right. You said it.
All right, y'all. Well, we are at the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up unless there are any other final thoughts or questions from our panelists or from the audience.
Well, I would just end it from our side of this thing is to encourage every one of you to seriously consider the LoanSTAR program. The money is available. It is there. The safeguards are. You won't find a program with more safeguards to make sure you're getting your dollar's worth. And the program has been around for a long time. It's going to be around for a long time. So I would really encourage you to look into this. Go to the SECO website and check it out because it is a very, very good program.
Great. Thank you so much, Jim and Chris, for all the work you do out there in Texas and for being here today. Have a good rest of your day, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.